So, real quick, it's crammed in here, isn't it? Yes. Oh yeah, Shabbat Shalom. It gets more crammed every time. So, real quick, we are growing, thankfully. This is a great problem to have. Okay. But it's still a problem. We're gonna fix it. So, how many of you raise your hand for familiar with Khan Academy?
All these people.
I think we all are.
So here's the thing. I notice a lot of times, because I'm a high school science teacher, so I understand whenever I talk, sometimes a lot of times the students don't know what to write down. So I'm very old-fashioned. I use a whiteboard. Does that look like a whiteboard? No. What happens if I write on this with a marker? I'll get in trouble. Okay. So I got this tablet. Okay, this actually solved my problems in my school. Okay, because now I'm able to draw what I do on the whiteboard. Now I can do it on the TV. Okay, so that way it's the same thing as if I would use a whiteboard, because I'm not a huge fan of PowerPoints. I'll use them if I have to. Nothing's wrong with them. It's just not my personal style. This is more my route. Personal, talk about it, write it down, discuss it.
You're really good at PowerPoints for someone that doesn't like to use it.
Well, it's because I use the PowerPoints in the way that I would write it. That's why. So hopefully this works out and I can do a little drawings and stuff, make a little fool of myself, but that's okay. If y'all don't like it, please let me know and I'll go back to PowerPoints. So I do not have to do this. Okay, I just wanted to try it and see if it works.
Okay.
Also, what else? Any other? At the end, I have an announcement. We're going to a bowling night. I forget exactly which one. My wife made a little graphic for it, so I'll be able to show you all that. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. So this is for you, for the thing. Let's go ahead and do the, you're good, Junior. Can you do the blessing?
Yeah.
I wonder how long it can
Calm down, everybody. Go. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בך בנו מכל העמים, ונתנו לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. Blessed Adonai, who is blessed, blessed Adonai, wait a minute, Fliptoni, who is blessed now and forever, blessed are you, Adonai, God, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us his Torah, blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. Amen.
So, this gentleman here is Rico Jr. son of the teacher out there. Okay.
Notice the matching shirts and hats, and not beards. I have a better beard.
Not beard.
Shirts and hats, yes.
So he makes these videos that we have. Okay, the Torah in 10. He's the one. He's the lovely voice behind the video. Okay. So we're gonna play this to give us a little bit of context before we dive in. Okay. And I know that you won't be able to hear it very well, so you have to use this one. So,
everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of Torah in 10, your weekly dose of Torah context in under 10 minutes. This portion is going to be a little more challenging because I'm going to mix in the previous portion of Vayera with Bo for this week. So this week we're going to be expanding from Exodus 6:2 all the way to Exodus 13:16. It's going to be a bit of a challenge to keep this under 10 minutes, so I should really cut this intro short and let's get started. Portion recap, maybe portions recap. Vayera and Bo are about the divine scales.
Can you guys hear in the back?
No.
Because, only because he's talking way louder.
yeah, that's true. You want to do it?
I legit don't want to do this.
Go ahead.
Let's do live. I'll write it. We'll do live.
I wish we could have.
Yeah, it's Exodus 10:1
You go back to the first slide. We'll just show you.
to 13:16. Yeah, right here.
Follow along.
Well, this is also including Vayera. Today we're only doing Bo.
So we're doing Bo, which is I believe from
10:1.
10:1 to 13:16.
Yeah. 10:1. I'll write it down. Don't worry. I have my glove and everything. EXODUS. ODUS. Dus. Okay, so I'll go to your little thing right here. There we are. All right, go ahead.
So
here.
This is.
How do you know if
That's interesting. Is that good? How do I know if it's working?
You don't. You just trust.
I like it. I like that. I like faith-based model.
Is this right?
Good. Nailed it. Okay. So for Parasha Bo, we've got the conclusion of the plagues. We have the locusts and the death of the firstborn, along with the there goes the mic, along with the commandment about Passover and how it's kept, when it's kept, why it's kept.
Thank you.
But there's also a lot going on as a subtext within the plagues, right? We're seeing it specifically through the perspective of Hashem and the Hebrews. We're not really seeing it from the Egyptians' perspective. The Egyptians have a huge big pantheon of gods, and all those gods have different facets and features and animals to go with them, and they're in charge of different things. So we don't really see how they're reacting, how they're feeling during these plagues. Because, yes, these plagues are bad. Like, for example, the plague of all the cattle dying. That's really bad, because then you really can't eat. You know, if you're a farmer, you lost all your animals. But cows are also represented in the divine realm as being associated with certain gods. Like Api, I think Ra also, the wife of Khnum also is in a cow form at some point. There's a lot of cows in their cosmology and their theology. Cows are extremely important. Same like frogs, for example. So when the Nile turns to blood and all the fish and all the animals in the Nile that live in there start dying, that's not only something bad. Oh, no, our water supply is blood, but now every animal that we consider sacred is also dying around us. Just like the plague of the frogs. A frog is yet another god. It's another holy animal that they equate to a god. So when you have frogs just piling out of everywhere and causing all these issues and dying in heaps, note how it mentions that they died and they had to pile them in heaps, and everything was foul. So every step of the way, you see Hashem just disrespecting, shaming each god individually through each plague. And some plagues cover multiple gods because there were multiple animals and multiple things that each god represented. So with this portion, we have the... Okay, so getting right back to the portion. This portion, we have the culmination of the plagues. The worst of the plagues happen, concluding with the death of firstborn, and then Passover, accompanying that to protect the Hebrews, allowing all the Egyptian firstborn to die, man and beast. And this Egypt is a large area. This isn't just around the Nile Delta like everyone thinks. This is all the way down into not southern Africa, but more south into Africa. And you have families that have no idea what's going on, that aren't even connected to this, that still live in Egypt and are faithful to Egypt, that now their firstborns are dying. Which is why that when God says it'll be a cry like there's never been before or never will be again. So imagine everybody in the United States, everyone's family in one night. If you're the firstborn, sorry, I'm the firstborn, I'm going. If your brother's the firstborn, your sister's the firstborn, they're going. It's over. Imagine that in one day, how insane that would be. And that's what you've got all over Egypt. That's why it's never happened again, and hopefully it never happens, anything like that. But so now so let's go on to the next slide. Yeah, this is a long part. This is most of the video, is the recap bit. Yeah. Wait. There you go. So beyond the events of Bo in this case, here we actually also have a depiction of the head god Osiris and Ra and his royal servants and the small little canoptic jars, and everything has a meaning. You can see the serpent on the crown. You can see the hawk. You can see Ra, the hawk. Now again, this doesn't mean too much, but when you have hail and you have falcons and hawks falling out of the sky because they're getting hit, they're seeing this like, oh my God, the holy animal of Ra just fell out of the sky dead. What's going on? This is happening all over Egypt. So, and some of these people don't have priests, or they're not speaking to Pharaoh, they're not hearing all the news coming from essentially the center of government, so they don't know what's really going on. So it's just causing all this havoc and all this chaos. So as Pharaoh continues to harden his heart, and his hard-headedness is causing the plagues, people are starting to notice this. People are noticing, okay, well, now the Hebrews aren't being affected by the plagues anymore. Everything's fine there, but for some reason, whenever Pharaoh says, I'm not going to let these people go, more stuff keeps dying, more things keep going bad. And this even goes into the people in the court of Pharaoh saying, are you not realizing that Egypt is in ruins? Let them go. So everyone is starting to realize that Pharaoh is not a righteous king. And he is suffering from a lack of ma'at, which is righteousness and justice in the Egyptian sense of ma'at, in the Egyptian sense. The previous slide showed a scale, right? That scale was important to their afterlife because depending on your level of ma'at, your level of righteousness and justice would determine if your heart was heavier or lighter than a feather. If it was heavier than a feather, then some kind of weird crocodile demon dog would eat it, and then you'd die forever. I don't get it. If your heart was lighter than a feather, then you would go on to the afterlife, and that's like heaven. So the fact that the terminology is saying, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. I will harden his heart, like stone. So everyone who's seeing this is not seeing Pharaoh being a righteous king because he's meant to be the personification of God to them, but they're not seeing that he's being righteous. So he's looking less and less like a righteous king. He's looking less like a worthy king and not like a god. So now he's chipping away at not only Pharaoh's kingdom, but the respect people have for Pharaoh and the office itself because of his hardening of his heart, because of Ma'at. And while we have the commandment of the Passover, notice the animals that are being involved, the lamb and also the goat. And it's a little weird to me that God makes a distinction saying that you can take a lamb or you can take a goat. Why a lamb or a goat?
Wasn't a lamb from either sheep or a goat?
Well, either way. Well,
a
lamb, yeah, it's the same species. But the point is, why does it go through the point of saying or goat or giving another option? That seems like a weird detail, unless you're looking at it from the Egyptian point of view. Because the lamb or the goat represented one of their high gods, Khnum, who was thought to be the god of the Nile, who was the god in charge of the flooding of the Nile, which brought forth prosperity and fertility to the land and all the crops. He was the potter. He ran the potter's wheel, which was another way of saying he created life. He was the creator god. So Khnum was respected as the one who would fashion people, right? And even the legend goes even as far as to say he would fashion babies in the womb and then place them into the wombs of expectant mothers. So that was what Khnum's role. I know it's weird, right? I don't get it either. Just imagine researching this. It's super creepy. But going into it, you understand, okay, now I know why they're choosing these animals, because Egypt, including Pharaoh, who was meant to be the head priest of all these gods, by the way. Because so Pharaoh, in every temple in Egypt, Pharaoh was meant to personally be the one to make sacrifices to the gods to appease them so they wouldn't kill everybody. But Pharaoh can't physically be in all the temples at the same time. So now you have a process of the priests in all the temples representing Pharaoh, who's a representation of the gods, trying to appease them. So you have that now. But at the same time, you have animals that represent these gods as well, such as the sheep or the goat. And you'll see this on the street lining, I think, to the temple of Karnak. There's a long road which shows like sphinx-like characters, but with the head of goats, all of them all the way down. It's like half a mile straight. It's really weird. But this is the entryway showing the power of Khnum, showing that he has authority in this area. He has authority in this temple. So when you have 600,000 plus Hebrews gathering lambs and goats at their doorpost, and at twilight, everyone's got to kill it to use the blood. You're an Egyptian. You're seeing this. You're freaking out. These are holy animals, which only the priests and highborns can actually sacrifice or eat. And so now you have a bunch of random people who you consider to be inferior to you, because not too long ago you were killing them by throwing them in the river and putting them in chains as slaves. So you have all these people murdering your sacred animal and then putting its blood on their doorposts and then eating them. And yet all the Egyptian firstborns die and none of the Hebrews die. At least everyone who did the blood. Because we have to think, there was also some converts. Egyptian people aren't stupid. Along the way, they're starting to see what's really happening. So that's why you have a mixed multitude who joins the Hebrews on the way out. So once we understand what's kind of happening within the mind of the Egyptians, it makes more sense why we have a mixed multitude. It makes sense why they choose the animals they do. Let's go to the next slide.
We'll cover a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to be covered even more in depth in the rest of the class. We're just doing this bit here. This is a good. Yeah, if you want, you can do it like the full screen so they can see the full. So you can see the full thing here.
Go ahead, bud.
I need the notes of the Exodus 10:1.
We're gonna talk about it.
Yeah. This isn't the whole class. This is like a little beginning part.
Because I have the verse written down on my
Gotcha.
phone.
No, that's actually
That's
one
cool.
of the first things I talk about.
Yeah, that's cool. More about it. We'll go more into detail about that. But this is a decent representation of some of the major gods, which are represented by different animals. You can even see you have Khepri, which is just a guy with a beetle head. You got Set, you have Thoth, who was an ibis, like a crane. You've got I can't really read that, but it's a person with a serpent head. You have Urias, which is the royal serpent. You have a god which has a serpent head. What was the first thing that was consumed in the court of Pharaoh? What did Aaron's staff turn into that ate something else? Snake. So the first thing they do when they get in there is to start disrespecting the snake god, which is also the authority of Pharaoh. Because in all their crowns they have the serpent. So that's something that they ascribe to protection for the Pharaoh. you can see here you have Anubis, which is basically a dog, Bastet, a cat, Horus, a bird, Khanum, the goat with the horns, which also, is it just me, or don't Satanists have the exact same kind of symbol? A person with like a goat head?
Yeah.
So you can see the battle is still going on. It's still happening. It's just different names now. Instead of Khanum, now it's called Satan or Baphomet or whatever you want to say. But people are still worshiping this thing, whether they realize it in the same capacity or not, but the figures are still the same. So this is kind of going over the same thing I just went over. And then finally, just some questions. By the way, this video is going to be on YouTube. It is on YouTube. We'll have the link, so if you want to see it again for the notes or whatever, or cool images of half people, half animal things, then have at it. Just some questions. Chaos and order in this portion. How many gods can you identify in each plague? That's kind of a fun one to do.
Oh, yeah.
And when was the first Passover? Like, what was the day of the first month? Which verse specifically states it? Wow, you cover all that. There it is. No, I want Babylonian month. Specifically Babylonian month? I want specifically that. Sure, you picked wrong, homie. I'm kidding. It doesn't matter. It does matter, but in this case, it doesn't matter.
So the way I'm going to set it up today is I have this note sheet that I'm going to go through. Also, I can download this whenever I'm done and post it onto the Google Classroom that all of you should have the code for. Okay, because I gave it to you 2 weeks ago.
Who doesn't have the code for that?
If you don't, I can put it up here again at the end. Right? So I can download this, put it on there, so all of you have all the notes. Okay, this is, again, not required. You don't have to write anything. This is more for us collectively, not just me. Collectively, help you visualize. I'm going to draw some really bad pictures. Hopefully get my point across. Okay, but it will work. It'll work. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start diving into it. I'm going to go alternate between this. I know you probably can't see this because whenever the HDMI changes, it gets really small. But I will read it. Don't worry about that. All right. So we're going to start with chapter 10. Okay, remember, Bo starts with chapter 10. Actually, let me go ahead and talk a little bit about Bo. Okay. So first things first, we'll talk about Bo. Okay, this portion is Exodus 10:1 to 13:16. Okay. Bo means to enter or to come in. Okay. And we'll also see that in, you know, that every time they name the portion, it's for a reason. It's one of the first lines. We'll see that. Okay, this is where God tells Moses to enter into the court, to enter into Pharaoh. All right. So what topics are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, obviously, the plagues. We actually have a lot to cover. It's 5:50. I don't know. Do you think we'll finish at 7:30? Maybe 7:30. Okay. So we're going to talk about the plagues. We're going to talk about international law. International law. That's going to be a big one. Don't worry, I'm not going to go too in depth on it because it's very heavy duty. Okay, I'll give you the crash course. International law. We're going to talk about messianic connections. I want you to understand that we can find Messiah everywhere. Every single portion is going to have messianic connections. And whenever we talk about Passover, it's going to be a huge one. Right? Y'all know when Yeshua was crucified?
No.
It's on Passover. Right? So this portion is going to be huge to talk about that. All right? Messianic connections. We're going to talk about, what else? Connection, Passover. And we're going to talk about other things. Okay, but real quick. Oh, messengers. Right, royal messengers. Okay, royal messengers. Remember, we compared Moses to Yeshua, right? Both are royal messengers. On behalf of who? God, right? Their king. Okay. So what happens? Say we have a letter. Okay, we have a letter or a message from a king. It could be a physical or literal letter. It could be vocalizing. Right? If I have a letter from king, can just anybody open up this letter and start reading it? You think? No, who can? Keep in mind, this is sealed. Okay? This is a seal, yes. The person sent, so only messenger can open. Okay, this is important. Okay? Because what if somebody, remember, who did God call to speak to Pharaoh? Moses, correct? So what happens if somebody in Israel started approaching Pharaoh on behalf of God? I see the actual messenger. No. So does he have the right to open up this seal and start talking? No. Okay. Remember, well, anyway. So whenever we read Revelations, we need to consider this. Okay, we're not going to read it today. This is just a fun fact. When you read Revelations, consider whenever Yeshua opens up the seals. Right? It's a covenant lawsuit. We're going to talk about that later, okay? But I want you to understand that only the messenger can do this. Moses was a messenger. What happens if anything happens to the messenger? Even today we see that, right? So say we have a messenger like Moses. What happens if Pharaoh kills Moses? What happens if Pharaoh kills Moses? What do you think? Remember, Moses, the messenger, is a literal representation of God, okay, according to Pharaoh. Okay, because he's a representative. Go ahead. Yeah, that's treason. Okay, so what happens is, if Pharaoh kills Moses, it is an act of war.
I'm pretty sure the entire country of Egypt would just explode if that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Just collectively.
Right. But what about a threat? What about a threat?
Or like threatens Moses to get out of Egypt.
Like, what happens if Pharaoh says, you know what, next time you see me, I will kill you? He's threatening God's messenger. That's still an act of war. So even threatening, okay, even threats equal war, okay? And we're going to see that's exactly what happens. Go ahead.
Doesn't it sound like you have to treat them as
Exactly. And we're going to read the servants, Pharaoh's servants, are even like, dude, let's get rid of this guy, right? But they don't say that. They can't. They say, how long will this guy be a snare to us? Do y'all know what a snare is? Like trap. How long will this guy keep us snared? Right? So they use language because they're using legal language. They cannot kill Moses. The second they kill Moses, it's as if they just killed the king, which shows no respect to. So, thanks. What do I want you to understand? Okay, I need you to understand that if Pharaoh kills Moses, it's an act of war. Also, if even threats equal war. Okay, so let's go here. I'm going to copy it down up here for us. Okay.
Oh, it's taking notes on that.
I'm going to download. It's going to be on the Google Classroom too. Okay. So, even threats to messenger equals what, y'all? War. This is what opens up the avenue for God to justifiably destroy Pharaoh. Right? That's why. Okay? Justifiably. Because this whole time, he's been kind of pretty passive about it. He's destroying every ounce of faith they have in their gods first. And then, through this act that Pharaoh does, justifies destroying Pharaoh. Right? So first, he destroys Pharaoh's identity. No one has faith in Pharaoh anymore. Which, as a result, you lose faith in the gods. Okay, because Pharaoh is a representation of the gods. Same thing with Moses. We're going to see a stark contrast because people lose respect for Moses. People lose respect for Pharaoh, but at the same time, the people are gaining respect for Moses. Are they gaining respect of Moses or God?
Moses. Right?
But God through Moses, right?
Oh.
Because remember, he's a representative.
True.
Right?
So only God gets the importance.
Well, yeah, in theory. Yeah. But you have to, that just adds another layer to whatever is said in the verse. Right? It's another unique way to look at it. It's like, oh yeah, obviously Moses is going to be popular. But what does Moses represent? He represents God. So God is therefore more popular as well. Okay? So that's what I want you to know before we get started. Okay? So let's go ahead and start reading. I'll read for us because I know y'all can't see it. Then the Lord said to Moses, go into Pharaoh, for that's where the name comes from, and I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs among them. Okay? And that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your grandson how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord. I don't know about you, but once I saw that, I was like, okay, what do these signs have to do with anything about showing how great God is, right? So let's go into it. So, in 10, 1 through 2, okay, so Exodus 10, 1 through 2, God says, I need to do these signs. I have to. Why does he have to? What do you think? Why does God? Why do God? Oh, this is English. Why does God have to do these signs? What do you think? Do these signs. What do you think? That, yes. Yes. But imagine, who's king right now? Who's king of Israel? God equals king. Okay. Well, also we have another king. Who's the other one? We have Pharaoh. Right now, where's Israel? Under the authority of whom? Pharaoh. Okay, this is where Israel is right now, under Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh's being an oppressor to God's people. Right? So let's talk about what a great suzerain would do. A great suzerain. Y'all remember when we talked about a suzerain vassal covenant? Okay, for those of you, I know the new folks might not have been there for that. Okay, but I'm sure you're familiar. Right? So we have the suzerain king. Suzerain. Under him is vassal king. Okay, then we have vassals. So right now we have God. Okay, I need to get rid of this. Don't think Pharaoh is above the suzerain. So we have God, we have Moses, and then we have Israel as the vassals, okay? So the vassals of God are being oppressed by this guy right here, Pharaoh. So if God is a great suzerain, which we know he is, what would he do? Protect his people, free his people. Okay, so this is why God has to do it, because he's the great suzerain over Israel, correct? That's why, because he takes care of his people. All right? Because what happened? Israel cried out to whom? To God. Therefore, he has to respond. If God did not respond, does that make him an oppressor too? Yeah, because he's letting his people be oppressed. So legally, God had to do that. But he didn't just want to, okay, let my people go, No, he wanted to destroy every ounce of idolatry in Israel. Okay, because think about it. How long were they there? Like 400 years, right? They were slaves for, 210, I think it was?
Yeah.
210, right? So they're serving Pharaoh. Okay, they're slaves to Pharaoh, so technically Pharaoh owned them. Okay, they're slaves to Pharaoh for 210 years. Do you think they would gather some bad habits?
Well, even before that, they're living good lives in Goshen before they're slaves.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as the scattered tribes here in the United States. How many of us did Christmas before we came here?
Exactly, a lot.
It's the same thing as what's going on now.
Yep, so we have a problem, okay? They picked up bad habits, and we're going to talk more about that, expand on it whenever we have the blood over the doorpost, okay? We're going to talk about idolatry. Okay, so that's why God has to do those things. He has to do it because Israel cried out. So why does God have to do these signs? Because God is a great suzerain. Okay, so let's go up here. Let's summarize that. Okay. So, well, this is the thing. You could even just write this down. This is the important thing. Like literally, whatever I write here is what I want you to know when you leave. This is more for a visualization of the thought process. Now you can copy it if you can. Okay, if you want to. So even threats to messenger equals war. So why does God have to respond legally? Because God is great, suzerain, frees his people. And yes, I write like that. Okay? Because God is great, suzerain, he frees his people. Okay? He has to legally. If he didn't, he's also the oppressor. You remember your mom or dad telling you, like, hey, if you see something happening and if you don't get involved, you're as if you were doing it yourself. Same thing. God has to do it. Okay, but back to my point. If they're in Egypt for like 210 plus years of being a slave, they're going to pick up bad habits and idolatry along with it. Okay? That's why God has to do those signs. He has to destroy the faith that they have in the gods first, and then Pharaoh, and then he frees them. And we're going to talk about the renewal of the covenant and all that stuff today as well. Okay, let's go back to reading. All right. So Moses and Aaron went. That's also why he says that you may know that I am the Lord. Because there's like, so many others that they're serving. He's saying, no, I am the, capital T-H-E, Lord. All right, so Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh and said to him, thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews. I always found that profound. I love that he says that. Oh my gosh. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go that they may serve me. If you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your country, and they will cover the face of the land so that no one can see the land, and they shall eat what is left to you after the hail. Keep in mind, like Rico was expounding upon a little bit, imagine how destructive this hail is. It's not just any other hail. Yeah, that's ironic because hail's ice.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
Looks like it's an unnatural phenomenon.
Right? Oh, that's weird. What a coinky dinky. Right? Phenomenon.
What? Phenomenon?
Okay. So we run into a thing where what's left after hail? Think about how big this hail and how destructive this hail is. It would have destroyed trees. Like any fruit trees, vegetables that they got, it's gone. Okay? Yeah, it wasn't like little pea-sized hail. No, it was probably the size of grapefruits coming down, right? It's very destructive.
Besides that modem rocketing at your face.
Yeah, that would not be good. And it probably killed a lot of animals. Go ahead, bud. Okay. Gotcha. So it would destroy a lot of cattle, a lot of flocks, a lot of herds, a lot of food sources for these folks. What the locusts would make sure that they didn't have any. Okay. Ears would have left you after the hail, and shall eat every tree of yours that grows in the field, and they shall fill your houses and houses of all your servants and all the Egyptians, as neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen, from the day they came to earth to this day. I want you to understand that every single one of these plagues are like, they've never seen this before in history. It's not like it's, oh, this has happened before. No. God really wants to make sure they understand this will never happen again, and this has never happened. Okay, I'm doing this. Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh's servant said to him, how long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go. Let the men go. Keep in mind, he did not say women, children, flocks. He said men. Let the men go so that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined? Let's talk about. All right, so let's talk about this. 10:7. All right. 10:7. So, his servant says, how long will this man be a snare to us? Remember we talked about a snare? Right, so I'm going to draw a little leg, okay? Here's a little leg. Pretend this is a rope. I'm sure you've seen this on like TV or something. Here's a little knot, right? And whenever you pull the rope, what's going to happen? It's going to wrap around the foot right here, right? It's not going to let him go. Okay, so it's a trap. A snare equals a trap. Okay? A snare equals a trap. Now keep in mind, who did the servant say let go? Did he say women? Did he just say children? No. Did he say flocks and herds? No. He just said men. Okay, so only men. But what I really want to focus on is Egypt is ruined. Now we didn't get to go into depth about the other plagues last week because we were gone. But a lot of stuff went down, y'all. Like a lot. The Nile ruined, fish killed, frogs done. A lot of their cattle dead because of the hail. Right? Darkness is coming up. That hasn't happened yet. And then we got locusts that just ate all their food. Egypt is literally ruined. Done. Even from there, it will probably take decades to recover from this, financially, economically, all that stuff. It's going to take a long time. Emotionally.
Yeah, everyone's traumatized now.
Right? Egypt is ruined. They know that. And think about it. Pharaoh's servants know that. Pharaoh's servants know that. I'm sure Pharaoh knows that, don't you think? Pharaoh knows this too. Pharaoh knows too. Okay? And this is what's really annoying. As we keep reading, he's so stubborn. He's so stubborn. He still refuses to let his people go, even though he knows his country is ruined. His authority is done. His own servants are literally like, dude, Egypt is ruined. What are you doing? Okay, let the men go. So we're going to continue reading. Okay? But I do want us to understand that in 10:17 they said only men, and that Egypt is ruined. Okay, so let's go up here and summarize it. Egypt.
Okay, maybe
Egypt ruined. Again, you don't have to write everything right. You do not have to do that. This is the most important part. If you could do this, you're on your way. All right, this is a great way to do it. Just the important part. Egypt ruined. Why? Why would it be ruined? Which plagues were like really, really, really destructive? Go ahead, bud.
the hail and the locusts.
It's because
because
Hail?
the hail is fiery and it can burn down the crops.
Okay.
And the locusts are like
Bugs. Like,
yeah. And then there was the blood.
yeah.
Blood plague. That was actually more worse than the locust because blood. If they said the blood in the Bible, if they said the blood took away the fish, and it can take away other stuff too because animals have to drink from it, and the animals are sacred. Like now in these
Exactly.
because like that.
Embarrassing.
Is too complicated. I don't know enough about like the Bible. That's why you're here.
All right. So let's go ahead and continue reading. So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh and said to them, so they left and then they were brought back, all right, said to them, go serve the Lord your God, but which ones are to go? Moses said, we will go with our young girl. So Pharaoh's just about to listen to his servants. Okay? He just listened to his servants. He understands Egypt is ruined. We will go with our young and old. We will go with our sons, daughters, and our flocks and herds, for we must hold a feast to the Lord. But he said to them, Pharaoh said to them, the Lord be with you if I ever let you and your little ones go. So savage, man. He's like, yeah, the Lord be with you if I let you go. Ha ha ha. Look, you have some evil purpose in mind. He's like, yeet, not going to happen. No, go the men among you. Who recommended that? This his servants, right? His servants recommended that, okay? And serve the Lord, for that is what you were asking. And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land and all the hail that has left. I kind of already touched on it. I highlighted it because I want to talk about the hail. But we kind of already did, right? The hail is super destructive. Like, it's not like a quarter or a golf ball. We're talking the size of my book, right? Talking about the size of, I forgot to put the resources I used in the beginning. I'll do it at the end. Go ahead, bud.
When it said like for the locusts, it was to be everything that was green.
Yeah.
Did that count for? Did it count for like the land that was around the country?
No. No.
Just around the area where the Egyptians.
Exactly. Yeah. So if God allowed the locust, hail, and everything destroyed to the land of Egypt, then he would be an oppressor as well. He made a point to separate the land of Goshen, which we'll see also in this one. He made a point to separate the land of Goshen where they were and Israel. And Egypt. Okay. All right, so let's continue. So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh. Already read that. So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind had brought the locusts. The locusts came up all over the land of Egypt and settled on the whole country of Egypt. Such dense swarm of locusts has never been seen before, nor will be again. Again, why would God do that? Whenever we talk about darkness, I'll talk about that, okay? They covered the face of the whole land so that the land was darkened, and they ate all the plants in the land, all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. So they have no fruit, no plants, okay? And a lot of times they didn't eat. Keep in mind, they didn't eat cows like we do. They didn't eat the lamb. They were largely, for the most part, pescatarians and vegetarians. That was their food source, okay? Yeah, for us, we're like, okay, just go carnivore, right? Yeah, just go eat meat. Well, they don't do that, because they're sacred. Okay, so he just destroyed their food source. That's also true. Yes. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field, through all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh, all the land of Egypt. The whole land. Like he just made a point. Keep in mind, like if I draw, which I'll draw, Egypt, Goshen is in the top left corner. That's where that's all the magic's happening. But all the land of Egypt, the people that don't even, like he said, like they don't got NBC, CNN, right? ABC News, nightly news. They don't have any of that. They don't have any. They're like, why the heck is this happening, right? That makes no sense. All the land of Egypt is being punished because of Pharaoh's stubbornness. Okay. What'd you say? Oh my gosh. Hey, Morocco did really well in the World Cup.
If you could like survive the hail getting out,
yeah. Yeah, honestly. Then Pharaoh hastily. What does hastily mean?
Quickly. It means when you do quickly.
Thank you, bud. Yes. Quickly called Moses and Aaron and said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore, forgive my sin, please, only this once. Boy. and plead with the Lord your God only to remove this death from me. So he went out from the Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord, and the Lord turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted up the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in all the country of Egypt, but the Lord had hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go. What'd you say?
Basically, he lied about what he said.
Yeah. He's always done this. He's always done this, right? But you notice right now, the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why? People. Why? Let's cover that. Nope, I don't want descript. It's going to open now.
I just noticed the direction of the wind.
Yeah.
And it came from the east, and then we were entered.
Yep, he came from the west. You enter the temple. So, why did God harden Pharaoh's heart? I saw someone raise their hand. Heart. Why?
Well, usually it says that he strengthened the heart, but in the last two
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective, right? But the nature of Pharaoh is very stubborn. So God probably wanted him to endure because he's not finished with Pharaoh yet. And he's like, no. They imagine like after the first plague, God only got to like disrespect one or two gods, and then he let him go. No, it's not enough for Israel to repent and go away from their idolatry. God's not done with Pharaoh. What was your point?
I think the reason that God hardened Pharaoh's heart is complicated. Like, I think it's because, like, well, I think what she said was better, but I think it was because, like, so he would make more decisions, and it will prove to maybe the Hebrews that their God is strong.
Exactly. That was perfect. Yeah. So God's not done with Pharaoh. Up next, we have the plague of darkness. Okay, and that's the one that's really like disrespectful. Because do you remember the sun god? Who's the sun god? Do you recall? Ra. Who is the physical human embodiment of Ra on earth? Pharaoh. So God's like, okay, you're not going to let my people go after the locusts. Bet. All right. Darkness, 3 days. Not 1 hour like a solar eclipse. Right? Yeah, like, no sunlight for you. But he makes the point to distinguish Israel, the land of Goshen, and Egypt. Okay? All right. So God's not done with Pharaoh. Let's continue. All right, where was I? Ninth plague. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, darkness that can be felt. So Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, okay, toward the sky, and there was a pitch black darkness. I don't know why that's not there. Black darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, but all the people of Israel had light where they lived. Then Pharaoh called Moses and said, go serve the Lord, your little ones may go with you, but only let your flocks and herds remain. So we got 21 to 24. Let's talk about this, because there's a lot to unpack. All right, so 10, let's say 21 to 24. All right, let's talk about this. Darkness. What is the source of light on earth?
The sun.
The sun. Okay, so we're talking about like which star. It affects the sun. And which god in Egypt was responsible for that, for the control over that? Yes, so we have to talk about Ra. Okay, we have to. Who, do y'all recall, who is the physical embodiment of Ra? Pharaoh. Okay, Pharaoh. So I want to go back to here to the solar eclipse. It's easy to justify 1 hour of darkness. We could say, oh, there's a solar eclipse, no big deal. That's not, I don't know, what's the word, divinely...
It's not 3 days long.
Yeah, it's not 3 days long, right?
You don't feel it.
No. So God's trying to make a point. He's like, there's literally no physical explanation for what just happened. Only God himself could do that. Okay? And think about it. He's disrespecting Ra and Pharaoh simultaneously. Okay? So this shows Pharaoh has no power. He has no control over Ra. Okay? And Ra therefore has no control over the sun. So does Ra exist? No. Because how do we know that? Which land still had light? Go ahead.
This is Goshen? Oh.
Yeah, so the land of Goshen, I'm going to draw Egypt as best I can. This area, land of Goshen, we got the Nile, okay, we got the Delta, okay, we have Egypt, the rest of Egypt, right? So what happens is we have all this area is completely blotted out by darkness. And imagine you look over the Nile, who's got light? Israel. Now keep in mind, it's not like politics is today. Back then, it's whoever God you serve. Okay? So if you notice, like, imagine across the street, somebody was like, something bad's happening over there. You look across the street and we're just happy-go-lucky.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, wow. So we see the gods of Egypt. Do they have control over the sun? No, how do you know? If you look across the street, you see that the land of Goshen, where Israel is, they still have light, correct? So we have the gods of Egypt, and then we have the God of Israel. Who provides light? The God of Israel. Who controls the heaven and the earth?
God.
The God of Israel. Okay, not Pharaoh, and not Ra. That's the message. Okay, go ahead.
But you shared that they were afraid of the darkness. Like they had a fear.
Oh,
Yeah, they did have a fear of the darkness. I think we can elaborate, because there would be like this battle every night between Ra and...
So in the Egyptian mythology, when the sun went down, it was as if the world's kind of ending, and Ra and Khnum, actually, who built the boat to go through the underworld to find the sun, that's where they go to bring the sun back the next morning. That's how they explain the sunrise and the sunset. So when you have 3 solid days of darkness, they're essentially thinking that, oh, the devil won. That's what every Egyptians were thinking, that the end of the world was happening, and that.
Oh yeah. That's
and then
right.
on top of that,
That's right.
Pharaoh, his job was to help the sun rise up.
To prevent that exact thing from
And
happening.
then when they go to him and it doesn't happen,
Yeah. Because
like,
for 3 days you're worshiping at a temple and nothing's changing.
Yeah, what's happening? Right?
Exactly.
So the darkness, okay, darkness equals Ra has no control, and that shows disrespect to Pharaoh. Pharaoh has no control. Okay, that's the summary for that. Let's go back up here. Darkness equals which Egyptian god? Ra, yeah. Ra had no control. Therefore, who's disrespected?
God.
Well, Pharaoh.
No.
Because recall, Pharaoh was the physical human embodiment of the god Ra. Okay, among others. Okay, but more specifically Ra. Okay, so we see that Ra has no control, therefore Pharaoh has no control. Kind of looks bad for Pharaoh, right? Go ahead, bud.
They also say that in Egyptian mythology that Pharaoh was the firstborn of Ra.
Exactly.
Yeah. And notice how Pharaoh didn't die.
In the
So he wasn't a firstborn.
he got shamed again.
They got shamed again. You're right. Yeah.
Triple shame.
Well, once we get to that, that's a good point. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, also I also do want to point out, what did Pharaoh tell them to leave behind? You recall? He said, go, women, children, men, but leave what behind? Cattle, flocks, and herds. So recall whenever we talked about Jacob and Laban, okay, what was cattle to them?
Sacred.
Well, no, I'm talking to Israel.
Oh.
To Israel.
This is complicated.
Money?
Money, wealth. Right? That's another reason why they were largely vegetarian. Think about it. If you eat your wealth all the time, you're going to be broke. Right? Yeah. So, cattle and herds, yeah, no money, equals money. Okay? Equals money. So, Pharaoh's asking for insurance. Pharaoh asking for insurance. Right? He says, no, you're going to come back to me because you just left all your money here in Egypt. Okay? There was one time I was working in a restaurant as a server, and somebody forgot their wallet in their car. And I was like, I've seen this before. And then he gives me his Rolex. right? It could have been completely fake. I don't know, right? So he gives me his Rolex because this is insurance. If I don't come back, you can cash it out. All right. That's one heck of a deal. You know, it was only $15. You know. So he left, came back, right? But think that's the same idea. Pharaoh's like, you're gonna leave. Yeah, I'll let you go with your women and children. But keep in mind, Moses also asked for flocks and herds because they have to do a feast. Okay. He says, no, leave them. It's like if we leave, we can't bring our cars, can't bring our houses, can't sell our houses for the money, right? We can't bring our wealth with us. It's insurance that they're going to come back. Okay, so let's go ahead and summarize that. So Pharaoh wanted insurance for their return. Also, I can't spell, okay? I was a science major. For return. So please forgive me if I don't spell right. Go ahead, bud.
So even back then, they knew what how to go. Depend on some other stuff.
I wouldn't say it was insurance. That's our modern day language. I would say more of a guarantee. You could say Pharaoh wanted a guarantee that they were going to return. Okay, so forget the word insurance. Let's do guarantee. Guarantee is probably a better one.
More easier to spell, probably too.
You're right. It helps me out.
It's easier to spell.
Yeah.
It's not wrong.
All right. So Pharaoh wanted a guarantee for the return. That's why he asked them to leave their flocks and herds. Okay. All right. Ready? Let's continue. Moses said, you need to sacrifice it. All right, so Moses said, you must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, okay, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also must go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind. What's a hoof? A foot. Okay, not a hoof shall be left behind, for we must take care of them to serve the Lord our God. And we do not know what we will serve the Lord with until we get there. So he's like, listen, I don't know what animal he wants us to sacrifice. Okay, I don't know yet, which is true. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Again, man, this guy. Okay? And he would not let him go. Then Pharaoh, remember, this is important, okay? If you threaten a messenger of their life, is that an act of war?
Yes.
Yes. Okay? Look what happens. Then Pharaoh said to Moses, get away from me. Take care. Never see my face again. Okay? For on that day you see my face, you shall die. And Moses said, all right, as you say. You'll never see my face again. That's true. He never sees his face again. Right? Because why? Moses understood the legal language that Pharaoh just said. Think about it, right? Say you're Pharaoh and I'm Moses. Right? You're a big bad guy. Right? And you just threatened me with my life. But who did you actually threaten? Me? Or my God? My king? You threatened my king, right? And I'm just laughing because I'm like, dude, God destroyed your land. What power do you have? As you say, I'll never see you again. All right, see you. I leave. God's going to take care of them. Okay? So this is legal language. Okay, so 10, 28, 29. Let's talk about this. 10, 28, 29. Okay, 10, 29. So this is legal language. Legal language. Pharaoh literally just declared war on God. Okay? Pharaoh. I told you this.
Luggage.
Language. Pharaoh declared what on God? War.
Oh, it was going to
Okay. Why did he declare war on Moses? No, not on Moses. He declared war on what Moses represents. What does Moses represent?
Israel and God.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Pharaoh declared war on God. Let me ask you a question. Alright, I hope I'm not overstepping. The second that they killed Yeshua, what was Yeshua?
He was
in this context right now that we're talking about Moses.
He was a messenger of God.
He was a messenger of God. He was the messenger. Okay, he was the messenger. What happened when they killed him?
He destroyed a temple.
Okay, 60 years later, yes, you're right. He did destroy the temple. All right, but what did they do to God? They just declared war on God. That's an act of war. It's treason. It's treason. Okay, but that's more. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, so 10:28-29. Pharaoh says, "The day you see my face again, you will die. I will kill you." You could just imagine Moses just totally like, dude, are you dumb? Like, seriously? Right? So, that is an act of war. Okay, he declared war on God. Alright, so we're going to see this moving forward. Okay, now, who has a legal right to kill him? God has a legal right now. He has a legal avenue to kill Pharaoh. Okay, because he just declared war on him. Okay, so this legal route to kill who? Pharaoh. I want you to understand, this isn't, oh, by the way, I don't want anybody to say Pharaoh. Now listen, did God have beef with Egypt or Pharaoh? Pharaoh. Okay? I appreciate you raising your hand, thank you. Yes, God had beef with Pharaoh, because Pharaoh owned Israel at the time. Okay? So with the death of Pharaoh, can God adopt Israel again? Legally? Yeah, he can.
Yes, because whenever there's a new leader, new laws are instated. Like if you look at our government now, it changes dramatically depending on who's in office.
That's true, because think about it, you brought up a good point. Whenever you have a change in government, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Okay, whenever we have a change in government, things have to change. Okay, if you go from an oppressor, if you're a good king, if you're a righteous king, what do?
You bring righteous things about.
Exactly. So we talked about that whenever we talked about Joseph. Okay, what makes a righteous king? That's why we, collectively, are called to practice righteousness and justice, because we also represent our king.
Mm-hmm.
And our king practices righteousness and justice, correct?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I gotta say, actually, on that, that's a good point, also, Nate, because what is given after they leave Egypt to Israel from God?
What'd you ask?
What was given to the Israelites?
What was given to the Israelites from God after they leave Egypt? That was the biggest change.
Covenant.
The law. He gave them a new law after they left the old law.
Exactly. So, legal language, Pharaoh declared war on God. Let's summarize that, okay? Pharaoh declared war on who?
God.
On God. Not Moses. On God.
He will never win that war.
LOL. You're right. I can imagine Moses just being like, dude, you're ruining. Like, seriously, man? Like, we were getting along so well, and then here we are. Right? Gosh.
On the opposite side.
Yes, okay. So let's scroll down a little bit. Alright. So, Pharaoh, let's recap. We just had the plague of darkness. Who was that affront to? Which Egyptian god? Ra. You're so polite, I appreciate you. I know what you're going to say, you always get it correct. So we say Ra. Okay? Who's the human form of Ra on earth?
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. So who did God just disrespect? Pharaoh. Right? Indirectly, Pharaoh. But also, if you have any ounce left, I'm going to tell you what, your entire country is done. Right? All leadership is done. Even some faith in some of the Egyptian gods done. Right? But the OG, like Pharaoh Ra, you're going to lose faith in him too? Good luck. Why do you think they lived in Egypt with a mixed multitude? Go ahead.
Because the Egyptians saw that Pharaoh had no more power over them and his livestock and the cattle and the sun.
Exactly.
And they saw that he wasn't a god, he was just a man, a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody
uses a restroom, right?
He had no power. Yeah. And so they all left. Even all the people in other parts of Africa probably too.
Exactly. Alright, so let's go to chapter 11. In case you didn't know, a lot of times political leaders who put themselves as deities will say, I don't use a restroom. So, let's talk about chapter 11. So we just finished chapter 10. Let's do a couple questions. This is tougher when I don't write them out ahead of time. So, What language did Pharaoh use that declared war on God?
Legal.
No, not legal language. Yes, he used legal language. What's that legal language?
Legal language.
It's right there on the screen, actually.
Yeah, you can read it. What did, I know, I'm sorry. What did Pharaoh say that declared war on God?
Threatened.
He threatened whom?
I'm gonna kill you.
Moses. Who's Moses?
Messenger.
Whom? Because I've been reading a lot, and apparently it's whom. Google Docs says it's whom.
It is.
I didn't know that. Okay, moving on.
It depends on the how the sentence is.
So, oh my gosh, this thing scrolls real quick.
It's a nice phone.
You guys can't see it, but it's like this cool, like.
Wow, chapter 11 is kind of short. All right, so the final plague. What's the final plague?
Oh, I forget. It can't be the
Shy. Oh, Shy rose her hand first. What is it, Shy? Firstborn. Good. Okay. Yes, it is the firstborn.
Okay.
Let me finish. So the Lord said to Moses, "Yet one plague more I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will drive you away completely. Speak now in the hearing of the people." They ask, every man of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor for silver and gold jewelry. I want you to understand, this is also some of the gold they use for the golden calf. What's so funny?
They just wasted it.
Who? The gold? Yeah, like what dodo birds?
They could have traded it in for something at least.
So, and the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and the sights of people. So, again, let's recap. What's going on? Moses gained favor. Okay? Gained favor. Who also gained favor through Moses?
Aaron.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's true. Okay.
And then God.
Yes, God. God gained favor.
And Aaron gave favor.
Yes. God gained favor. Israel
gained
favor. I'm sure people were scared of the Israelites. Okay, think about it. You're like, oh my gosh, your king's destroyed us. Right? And you're living in their land? Heck no. Right? Checkmate. Who said that? That's right. Checkmate. This is checkmate. This first board is checkmate, and we'll explain why. Okay, so yeah, they use the gold to make the golden calf. How was it running? The stuff like the wealth that God gave you to pay back. So this wealth, this gold pays back. What does it pay back? What were they for 210 years? Slaves. Pays back slavery. He gives them their wages for their work. Even though God, they weren't slaves under God, they were slaves under Pharaoh. So, this plunder that they get from Egypt, it pays back their wages from slavery. Even though they weren't a slave under God, God still says, listen, I'm righteous, I practice justice, you're going to plunder this nation for what they did to you. Okay, so they go and they ask for stuff, okay, and they get a bunch of money. Alright, it pays back for their slavery. And I think I have one more point for that one. Let me read. 12. No, okay.
Right?
Go ahead, bud.
Like,
so Moses said, "Thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the Pharaoh, or the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle." I'm going to stop there, okay, because I have two big points in chapter 11, okay? So I'm going to ask you a simple question. A simple question. Why firstborn? Why firstborn? Anybody tell me?
Because the firstborn is given the right as like a firstborn to have like authority over the one that is born like after them. Like the
That's true.
Well,
That's
that
true.
inherits everything in like Egyptians.
That's true. That's true. Anybody else? Good point. There's a couple reasons. Okay. So let's talk about what the firstborn is. Okay. Go ahead, Marcus. Pharaoh, yeah. Of whom? Yes. Let's talk about firstborns. Okay. Firstborn. when you're firstborn.
Firstborn?
Firstborn.
Firstborn. So whenever think about it, is this an honorable position in the family? Yes. Who said no?
Exactly.
Probably.
It's an honorable position. Okay? It's an honorable position. A lot of times also in this land, they were dedicated. Dedicated to their gods. To gods. Okay? This could look differently, okay? If God wants us to also dedicate our firstborns, okay? But not like the way they did. Okay? They would do it a couple different ways. They would set aside, or, can anybody tell me the other way? Sacrifice. Well, I mean, they didn't sacrifice their kids because they were still alive at this time. Okay? So dedicated to gods, alright? This is important because we're going to talk about 3 layers as to why God chose the firstborn. Okay? They're a sign of honor in the family. Okay, so firstborn, honor in family. Alright, honor in family. So if your parents die, I know it's sad to think about for a second, but put yourself in their shoes. If me and my wife have a son, okay, and they're the firstborn, and then the firstborn dies, and we don't have any more children, what happens to our family lineage? It's gone. What happens to us whenever we get old? We can't provide for ourselves. So then we get into adoption, right? But all the other kids are dead, you know? So it's like, what happens? You destroy the country. You destroyed the country. Yeah.
Does it count if the kid was a bastard?
Yes.
Yeah, all firstborn.
Because it mentions the slave girl behind the handmill.
Yes.
Even the animals.
Even the animals.
Yeah, so all firstborns, gone.
That's a whole generation.
Gone. Okay, so firstborn, honor and family. This is a big one. Dedicated to gods, okay? Dedicated to gods. And who is also the firstborn? Pharaoh. Supposedly. Yes. Supposedly. Allegedly firstborn. Okay? This is why he does this. By God killing the firstborn, he is eliminating all things that were dedicated to the gods. Imagine that. Right? All things gone. All your honor in your family, gone. Pharaoh that you thought was firstborn of this God, God doesn't even exist. So how is he going to be the firstborn of it? Okay? Sorry, Shai. I'm trying to write as big as I can. Okay. Gotcha. Oh, the time? It is 6:45. So we got about 45 minutes, roughly. So we're making good time. So firstborn, honor and family. Okay? So he strips Egypt of honor. Okay? So strips Egypt of what?
Honor.
Egypt of honor. Okay? He strips Egypt of their dedication. Egypt. Egypt of dedication to gods. Okay? Dedication to gods. And that's huge. That's huge. I think that's one of the big ones. Okay, for sure. God, yes, he strips Egypt of all of their honor. All the honor in the family is gone. Okay, but also he strips them of any dedication, any good standing that they have with their gods. Done. Done. Okay? Like, just imagine the fear. Right? Just imagine that, like, oh my gosh, my God's going to be mad at me because my dedication died, you know? That's crazy. And then strips Egypt of faith in who?
In God. Oh, no.
No.
In their gods.
Pharaoh.
Oh,
yes, directly because of the dedication to God. Yes. So, strips Egypt of honor, dedication to gods, in the faith that they have in Pharaoh, and indirectly, all right, as a result of them having no faith in Pharaoh, who's the main priest in the pantheon? Pharaoh. So all the other gods too. Okay, so this leads to gods. Okay, does that make sense? I know it's a lot of information. Okay, so by killing the firstborn, he strips Egypt of honor. He strips them of anything dedicated to other gods. Okay, which is huge. We're not supposed to have anything in our household dedicated to other gods. Okay, including consuming food that's dedicated to other gods. Okay, and he strips Egypt of any faith that they have in their Pharaoh, and as a result, all faith in their gods. One swift blow. Well, I don't know. He had 10 punches ready. he had plenty. He probably still had more in the barrel. Okay. So does this make sense? Make sense? All right. Let's summarize up here. So firstborn equals strips Egypt of honor, strips Egypt of dedication to gods, and then finally strips Egypt of faith in their gods because of Pharaoh. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there's 3 layers we talked about there. I could go on more. Okay? But for the sake of time, I'm going to stop right there for the first one. Okay?
This is like a lot of in-depth information on what the Bible says, and this is more of a historical remark to the Bible.
This year, we're only really focused on context, the historical context of it. Once we get a grasp of that, we're going to move towards more in-depth context with messianic connections. We could probably dive into prophecy at definitely a later time. Okay. But once we get a good grasp, a good foundation, we're able to build and build and build and build. That's what we're trying to do. So it's a lot of information, but I want you to understand that, not that this is the basics by any means, because that's kind of, what's the word? It's kind of undermining its significance. This isn't the basics. This stuff is foundational. This is one layer of something that we could go into 70 with. Okay? Like this is a lot of stuff. Okay, we're gonna spend the rest of our lives learning the Torah and still learn nothing. Okay, compared to how many layers there are. Alright? So, we're going to go ahead and move on. Now we know why God chose the first one. Okay? So, we know that Pharaoh literally and figuratively is not a firstborn. Okay? Alright. This is huge. So, there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such there has never been, never will be again. But this is so important. Okay? 11:7. We're going to talk about this for a bit. But not a dog shall growl against any people of Israel, either man or beast. You may know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Okay, I'm going to read this again, and I want somebody to ask me a question. But not a dog shall growl against any people of Israel, either man or beast, that you may know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. If you know me at all, you know which question I have in mind. Anybody? The only person I know that well is out there, so she would be able to ask.
Who?
Read it again.
Wow, I hear you.
I can't.
I don't know
that much. Right. So, but not a dog shall growl against the people of Israel. What the heck does that mean? Why a dog?
Because dogs are man's best friend. If
all right, a dog shall growl. No dog shall growl. This, according to there's an article that the dog in Exodus 11:7. It's an article. It's on page 505 that describes this legal language in this right now. Because this is not the first instance of it. There's more instances of this similar language, and I think it's in Isaiah 35, verse 9. I could be wrong on that. Actually, I'm 100% wrong on that. Isaiah 35:9. It might be about a lion eating the bodies. And then we're going to see it in 1st and 2nd Kings. This is using language that people are familiar with. Okay, so let's say we have a dead body. Okay? Don't laugh. We have a dead body. Okay?
Sorry. Oh my god.
Okay, we got a dead body. Oh, so what happens? What happens? What happens to the body? I know, I'm sorry, this might be a little vulgar, but think about it. What happens to the dead body?
It starts decomposing.
Decomposing, but do animals eat it?
I mean, it depends on the kind of animal.
Look at, we got vultures.
That dog goes.
We got vultures. We have dogs. Okay, dogs were like wolves. Okay, think about that. Wolves. We have wolves. Wolves. We have lions. Was that right? No, right?
It's jackals.
Jackals.
Which are
Yeah, right. I can't believe I remember. Oh yeah.
Does that say lion?
So lions. Yes, lions. What do they do to the bodies? They consume it. So let's draw a little.
Not that type.
A straw lion.
What is that?
That's a lion. Okay, that's a lion. What would the lion do to the body?
Right.
Right? Okay, I could draw a poodle. Okay. But here's the idea. In all of these situations, it doesn't matter which animal we use. What's still laying there? A dead body. Okay? No matter what, it always involves a dead body. So this is language. I'm not even going to bother spelling it. Language. Language. You know what I'm talking about. Abbreviation. Language with death. Okay? So I'll read to it again. I'll come back to this. Don't worry. I'll read it. But not a dog shall growl against any people of Israel, either man or beast. So you may know that the Lord makes a distinction. So I had a question. Hold on. Let me ask the question. How does a dog not growling against Israel make a distinction between Egypt and Israel? That's my question, right? So it says, what this is happening right now says, Israel will not die. Will not die. But that only answers one part of the question. How does this language tell me the difference between what will happen to Israel and what will happen to Egypt? If we know using this language, Israel won't die, well, that means something different has to happen to Egypt. Egypt will what?
Die. Cease to
Egypt
exist.
will die. Okay. You see, that's the language. The language is saying, hey, the dog won't even bark at Israel. So that you know there's a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Well, that's only the first part of the question. How does it make a distinction? Because the opposite must happen to Egypt. Okay, so I'm going to highlight. We got 11:7. Okay, and then we have this right here. Israel will not die, but Egypt will. All right, so let's go up here and summarize. This is like my little drawing. No, that's fine. So 11:7. Israel will not die, but Egypt will what?
Egypt will die.
Egypt will die. Okay, and obviously not all of Egypt, okay? But who represents Egypt?
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh.
Or whatever Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. So that means Pharaoh will die, right? So we already know what's going to happen. Well, first of all, you threaten him, okay? And good luck with that. But second of all, now we see legal language being used to say that Israel will die. And all of the people in Egypt are going to understand there's a difference. And that God makes a distinction between Israel and Egypt. So if it means Israel won't die, what's going to happen to Egypt?
Egypt will die.
The opposite's going to happen. Okay. Let's go back. All right. So right here. And all these your servants will come down to me and bow down to me, saying, "Get out, you and all the people who follow you, and after that I will go out." And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger. Okay, Moses is upset. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh will not listen. Okay. Pharaoh will not listen to you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt." Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people go. Listen, this was a threat. This didn't happen yet. And this is a threat. Okay, Moses was still talking to Pharaoh when he said all this. And so basically what happened was, you just threatened my life. So God is threatening yours. And who's going to win? God, naturally. Okay? So you threaten my king. My king's going to kill you. Simple as that. Okay, but not only you. He's going to strip you of all your honor in Egypt. He's going to strip you of everything dedicated to your gods. And he's going to strip everybody's faith in you and your gods. Right? Because think about it. There's a battle. Let me draw this out, actually. It just came to my mind. It's actually pretty cool. Right? Probably not cool to you. That's fine. So we have a little battle, right? So we have representatives on both parts, right? Brett, Lucas. 2 representatives. Okay? 1 to God, our God, right? God of Israel. And then 1 to God's little g's in plural. Big G, not plural, right?
Sorry.
So, you see, there's like a little battle going on between these two. Okay? Which one's going to win? Which one's winning right now? This one. This one doesn't even have a chance. Right? No chance. So you see there's a battle, a literal battle between the representatives and the gods. But did the representatives ever die?
No.
Which one did? This one.
Bo and Ra?
Yeah, Pharaoh died.
And Pharaoh.
Pharaoh died. So therefore, who died?
Gods.
Moses was threatened, but did he die? No. If Moses died, that would mean that God doesn't exist. Right? Think about it. If God let Pharaoh succeed in killing Moses,
I mean, God
problem.
doesn't.
And I'm not saying that because Yeshua died, that God doesn't exist. That's not what I'm saying. That legally actually had to happen. We talked about that whenever we talked about the covenant of the pieces. Who walked between the pieces? That's HaMashiach, the Messiah. It wasn't Yeshua yet. Okay. So legally he had to die. That's different. But I'm saying right now in this little soap opera that we got going on right now between the two representatives, that would be a problem. Because they just gained, think about it, they just gained so much favor in Egypt. If Moses died, that would mean something bad on behalf of God. Right? But because Pharaoh died, their gods didn't support Pharaoh. Okay? And it goes back to Ma'at and all that stuff. Okay? So, congrats, y'all. We're on the next page. Woohoo! Yeah. So let's get through chapter 12. Let's see if we can do that because it's already 7. Okay? I do have a couple points. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be for you. Now, listen, there's a lot. I could sit in chapter 12 all day. Okay? But whenever, because this is about Passover, whenever we get closer to Passover, this is where we're going to talk more about those commandments that come along with it. I'm going to give you a basic rundown as to why we need Passover, what it means. And then I think it's going to be it for Passover today. Because as we continue, I don't want to do it now and then y'all forget, and I expect you to remember later. That's not what we're going to do. We gave you the crash course for Passover, and as it approaches, we get more and more detail, because it's very complicated, very complex, okay? So, tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb, according to the Father's houses, a lamb. Remember what a lamb means to them? That's the sacred animal, not to Israel, to Egypt, okay? And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons, according to each. You shall. You know what? I'm just going to have to go into it because I'm not going to have time to read it all and then talk about it. But maybe I can. I'm going to try. Okay. That shall be without blemish, a year old. I have in my notes a lamb. Let me draw that. A lamb. Let me double check my notes really quick before I do that.
You know what? If you want, I can make a quick point. So, as we know, the god Kanu, being represented by a lamb or a goat, was also thought to be the creator god who created all the other gods. And he fashioned them. So, now we have a distinction between the fake god, the fake lamb. And then if we fast forward all the way up to Yeshua, then we have John the Baptist declaring, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Who was killed but then rises again. So now we can see with these two distinctions, we see the clear fake one from Egypt and then the actual one which comes later on, which is Yeshua. Using the same imagery. What was the question?
When Joseph's brothers went to like Pharaoh's palace to eat with Joseph, they had to eat separately because the Egyptians.
It could have been that, or it could have just been Pharaoh was doing something else. There's many different reasons for that. That could have been more of a political thing. At the same time, Joseph is also messing with his brothers. So he was putting his brothers through things sort of out of spite, but also to see if they had all matured. So that also could have been an element of that too.
Okay, so the lamb could become from a sheep or goat. Okay, sheep or goat. Both a lamb is a young one. Okay, now a lamb, if I'm correct, a ram?
Yes, ram.
Isn't that a grown lamb? I think male, right?
Don't they have horns?
Yes.
A ram?
So ram is an adult. Gosh.
ADULT.
Adult lamb, male. I want you to think about this first. Let's go back mentally to sort of Isaac. Not Isaac. It's Isaac. It's Isaac. Abraham's Isaac. Okay? Now, what was stuck in the bushes?
A ram caught in the thicket of its horn.
A ram. An adult, male, sheep or goat. Did he sacrifice that ram? Yes. That's familiar because what happens when the angels go into Lot's house? What were they eating? No, they were eating unleavened bread. Alright. I heard Rico say this and it blew me out of the water. He said the day that Abraham killed the ram. Now, a ram is an adult what? Lamb. Okay. An adult lamb. Now, obviously, Isaac is a big foreshadow for Yeshua as well. Okay. So, we see that this is the anniversary of, it's happened on the same day that Abraham killed the ram. Because Lot's family was already eating unleavened bread. It's crazy, right? So it's like 400 plus years before this day, Abraham killed the ram. 400 years. Way more than that, actually. Above 400 years. Did y'all know that? I think you did. Shai, Andrew, familiar? No? Oh. So the day that Abraham killed the ram, that's the anniversary, that's actually the real first Passover. In a way, 430 years. So it wasn't a Passover yet, it was a type and shadow of the Passover. And then we say on this day, what day? On the anniversary of Abraham killing the ram, we see the same thing happening here, but it has a different function. Okay, just one time. Okay. Alright, so a lamb, a sheep, or goat, same species. I think it's Ovis. I could be wrong. Ovis is a species. Okay.
Ovis?
Ovis, I think. It might Ovis or Ovin, I don't remember. No, Odin.
You're gonna look it up?
Nope. Just take my word for it. Okay? Please fact check me later. Alright, so you are to take a lamb without blemish. Without blemish, okay, so without a rash, without any cuts, with nothing. It has to be perfect. Okay? A year old. You may take it from the sheep or the goats, because they're the same species, and you will keep it until the 14th of this month. Okay, then the whole assembly, the congregation of Israel, shall kill the lambs at twilight. I'm really trying to get through this. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts in the lintel of the houses that they eat it. I'm going to spend the rest of the time on this verse. Is that okay? I'm not going to be able to finish it. Okay, what's up?
When they put the blood on the doorpost, that's to signify that the Spirit of God that takes away the soul of the Egyptians.
No.
That's to tell God to not go into that house.
Well, yes, you're right on that. We're going to expand on this. We're going to spend the rest of the 25 minutes on this. Okay, because this is huge. If you know me by now, what question am I going to ask? I read it to you again. That's okay. My name's Lucas. Okay. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts in the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. What question am I going to ask? Andrew, do you know what question I'm going to ask? Come on, man. Anybody? Which question? My favorite question is why. Okay. Why? So which particular why am I going to ask about this? Go ahead.
Why didn't they put it like on the...
Thank you. Yes, we're best friends now.
Yeah.
Why the doorpost?
Favoritism.
Well, you're right.
Hey, yo.
Why the doorpost? That makes no sense, right?
Because it would signify to the angel of death to skip over the house.
Yes, but no. Yes.
They had symbols of the gods in the door.
Yes. So why the doorpost? There was in a museum, I think it's the Ancient Near Eastern Museum in Israel. They had a fragment of Pharaoh's door. Guess what was inscribed? God's inscribed on doorposts. Okay, on doorposts. Now keep in mind, which doorposts did God tell them put it on? Whose? On the entrance, but whose? Specifically whose? The Israelites. So does that mean that the Israelites picked up bad habits while they were there for a couple hundred years? Yeah. Do you think that they would inscribe gods that they were loyal to on their doorposts? Why do you think God has to completely do away with and shame every single Egyptian god? And he made a point to do that. Not for Pharaoh, it's not for the Egyptians, it's for Israel. He had to make a point to Israel. He had to tell the Israelites, listen, your gods that you got on your doorposts, they are nothing. Okay? That's what he's saying. Okay? God's inscribed on doorposts. That means you are loyal.
Loyal to the end.
Okay? Loyal and, what's the word I'm looking for? Loyal and that you are servants to them.
submitted to.
Or submitted to, yeah, right, okay. So yeah, that's why he picked doorposts. Now let's talk about this, because this has so many layers, okay? So remember I said that the Hamashiach, the Messiah, is all over this portion. Like, literally all over, okay? And you're looking at me like, oh, dude, but... So let's talk about that. What's up?
Do you think that if I were to go to another country, I would be protected by God?
Well,
I would say yes.
I would say yes. If you proclaim him as your king and you properly, yes. But listen, if you go to another country and you break the covenant that you agreed to, you welcome this one. You have to understand that. Okay. So let's talk about this. Is the doorpost and the lintel. Okay. So in this, I just described. I don't know what it looks like exactly. Okay.
Had like literal images.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I don't know, it's on the doorpost and everything like this. But either way, there's a bigger meaning. Okay. Blood. Whenever you see blood a lot of times, it's a covenantal renewal. Covenantal. Soul. Thank you. Renewal. Yeah. Covenantal renewal. So this right here, Passover. Passover, covenantal renewal. Covenantal renewal. So it's a covenantal renewal. If any of you know me, you're gonna know my next question. Why? No, this one's which? Which covenant? Which one?
Between God and man.
Which man?
The Israelites. Between God and the Israelites.
Abraham. Oh yeah, Abraham. Covenant of promise. Let's talk about covenant.
Oh God.
We're gonna talk about circumcision, y'all. Alright. I'm sorry, I just gotta say it. Okay, be ready, because it's gonna happen. Covenant of promise between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So this is important because we saw, okay, let's scroll down. We saw that there are pieces, okay? It's called the covenant of pieces for a reason. We got pieces of animals that were cut in half. Okay, and these are all three to be technically correct.
Cool.
Okay. Now, who walked between the pieces? The Hamashiach, the smoking fiery furnace, who's described like that in Revelation, Yeshua. So it confirms actually that Yeshua is the Hamashiach. Right, so I'm going to draw, say, a smoking pot. And fiery furnace, how would I draw that?
Just smoke.
Draw fire. Okay, anyways, you get the idea. The Hamashiach walked between the pieces. Now, Abraham is over here sleeping, okay? And God's over here, okay? God is over here. Now, why would Hamashiach walk between the pieces? Whoever walks between those pieces, they have to abide by it, right? So this didn't just represent Abraham. This represented Abraham's seed. Okay? Abraham's, I'm going to a point here, okay? Abraham's seed. So, no, you're not allowed to finish. So Abraham's seed, Abraham's seed, if Abraham's seed transgressed the covenant, what does that mean? Who has to die? The one that walked in between the pieces. Jeremiah 6. Can anybody go there real quick? Jeremiah 6. Jeremiah 3, 6. Sorry, Jeremiah 3, 6. Jeremiah 3, 6. Jeremiah 3, 6. 3 to 11.
Okay, let me look for it on my phone.
Wait, 3 to 11 or 3 to 6?
Jeremiah 3, 6 to 11.
The Lord said to me in the days of King Josiah, have you seen what she did, the faithless one, Israel, how she went up on every high hill, under every green tree, and there played the whore. And I thought, after she had done all this, she will return to me, but she did not return, and her treacherous sister Judah saw it. She saw that for all her adulteries, for that the faithless one, Israel, had sent her away with a decree of divorce, yet her treacherous sister Judah did not marry. But she too went and played the whore.
Okay, in 2 seconds.
Go.
So, Israel broke the covenant by committing idolatry, right? God sent them with a letter of divorce. But the house of Judah, in recompense, came back to God, not because they wanted to, But kids are like, oh shoot, we messed up. No, I'm gonna lock this door. No.
Lock the door. I got you.
So, focus. This ties everything together so beautiful. So, the Passover lamb, what did it cover? The doorpost. What's on the doorpost?
The gods.
Gods, which signified idolatry on behalf of Israel, correct? So, the blood of the lamb covered the idolatry of Israel, correct? And we have to think threshold covenant. Blood, renewal of covenant. Which covenant? Covenant of promise, one given by Abraham, to give us an inheritance to go into covenant with God. That's why there's a commandment that whoever is not circumcised cannot partake in Passover. It's a sign of the covenant that he made with Abraham. Sorry, I know this is the main point. So, when did Yeshua die? Passover. So he was the Passover lamb. What did the blood cover? Idolatry. So that we may come back into covenant. It's Passover, y'all. It's the same thing. Same thing. It covers the idolatry that we did that caused us to be deformed. Right? Sorry, I really wish I could have wrote this down. Okay? Alright. Y'all learned something?
Yes.
Sorry, I know I kind of went on a rant. Alright. Thank you. I appreciate y'all. And we're editing you out. Yeah.